A new legislative session is underway here in Jackson, Mississippi. And so far, almost 3,000 bills have been drafted. Many more bills are expected to emerge between now and the mid-February deadline. Of those thousands of potential new laws, only a few hundred are expected to then emerge from the various committees about a week later. Of those bills that do emerge, they have to get through both the Senate and the House, and of course avoid the governor's veto, in order to then become law. So what are the chances that amid all of that, Mississippi's actually going to see some significant changes this session? There'll be no shortage of what those in the Capitol call show bills. Now, a show bill is a law that is passed which is essentially declaratory in nature. They sound great, but they're largely inconsequential. Think of a show bill as the equivalent of a legislative press release. It's done for show. What Mississippi needs is not showboating, but the sort of significant reforms that would change our state for the better. Now, here are three big changes to look out for. Number one, education freedom. Now, every year sees a blizzard of different education bills. Don't get me wrong, many of these are important in their own right. But what are the chances that we're actually going to see some of the game-changing reforms that are happening in education in states all around us? Last year, for example, Arkansas passed the LEARNS Act, which raised the minimum teacher salary in that state to $50,000 a year and established a system of education freedom accounts. Will we see something like that? That would mean that participating families get given an account into which the state government would pay about 90% of the previous year's average net school aid per student. That would be pretty transformative. Parents would then be free to use that tuition on fees, school supplies, tutoring services. Mississippi needs a school funding system that funds students, not systems. I'm very excited about the prospect that we see something like this here in Mississippi in this session. Secondly, elimination of the state income tax. Now, I was super excited to hear Governor Tate Reeves again identify eliminating the state income tax by 2029 as one of his top priorities. As he put it, eliminating the state income tax doesn't require cutting expenditure or raising taxes in other areas. Rather, it requires our government living within its means. Massive amounts of inward investment are now starting to flow into Mississippi. There's a real chance for our state to prosper. It would be a game changer if our state lawmakers seize this moment to pass legislation now to eliminate the income tax before the end of the decade. Will they? Let's see. Thirdly, action to improve healthcare. A lot of lobbying is happening right now in the Capitol to try to expand Medicaid. There's never a shortage of those eager to explain why something needs to be paid for with someone else's money. For some on the left, Medicaid expansion has become a sort of totemic issue. They've stopped debating about whether Medicaid money would improve outcomes. They just tell you that they feel that it's the right thing to do. It's become an emotive subject. I fear that anyone who sees Medicaid expansion as the only way to improve healthcare is going to be bitterly disappointed. And I think incidentally, so too will the taxpayers. Over a quarter of the state already receives Medicaid benefits, and they often have suboptimal health outcomes. Moving people off of private insurance programs onto Medicaid, which would inevitably happen, would be unlikely to improve things. There is, however, one thing that our lawmakers could do right, which would improve access to healthcare. They could repeal the intentionally anti-competitive so-called Certificate of Need laws, a system that has hamstrung our healthcare system for a generation. Will our lawmakers do the one thing that would be certain to improve access to healthcare? I'm hopeful that they will. I think there really is a chance that they might. This new legislative session marks the start of Mississippi's 4-year political cycle. Republicans now hold every statewide office. They've got a whopping great majority in the Senate and the House. There could never be a better time to achieve significant change. Political capital, politicians sometimes mistakenly believe, can be banked, it can be put away, kept for another day. In reality, political capital loses its value faster than a dollar bill does under Joe Biden's inflation. When it comes to political capital, it's a question of, do you use it or do you lose it? Let's hope our legislature spends their capital to achieve the change we need this session.